Hello everybody and welcome to another new player guide where if you're new to the series, we go over the hero, the 15 to 17 cards that are available in their pack. They will be in every single deck you play with this character, plus an example deck, the obligation, and the Nemesis set. Just to understand, you've picked up this hero, what can you do? The example deck is going to be for the purposes of you have now played the deck as it was pre-constructed, but where can you go from here? Today's example is going to be pretty minimalist, but I try to keep that to 2 to 4 example decks from the community, or 2 to 4 packs in a deck to minimize the amount of product you have to open and try to, whenever possible, take those cards or take those decks from the community on Marvel CDB. Today, of course, we're talking about Miles Morales, a 4 recovery alter ego with the citizen trait, with the civilian trait, and the responsibility of, after you change to this form, shuffle 1 Spider-Man card from your discard pile into your deck. Just for clarification, because we have 2 Spider-Men in this game, Miles Morales and Peter Parker, I don't think that there is a situation where the game is going to have somebody else's identity-specific cards in your discard pile. But for the purposes of this card, we are talking about just the Miles Morales Spider-Man. Additionally, the Miles Morales identity is something that you're probably going to find yourself in a lot. Spider-Man, Miles Morales likes to do that. He likes to go alter ego to hero on a pretty regular basis. In fact, one of his cards is going to help facilitate that really well. I think that also adds to the the feedback I got on my Colossus video. If you haven't seen it, check it out, where Boom Guy from the Winning Hand podcast, as well as All Hands on Decks, pointed out that Miles has on par, if not better, recursion than Colossus, with, I believe he cited War Machine as having the next level of that. And I don't know if I necessarily agree, although I will say that Miles is a different enough character that I don't have recent enough experience with. Maybe there's something I'm overlooking, but I will say that he probably has better recursion in the fact that while Colossus wants to go to alter ego, I think Miles is going to find himself in alter ego even more. So he probably does, on average, get more recursion. But let's talk about the superhero form real quick. We are looking at Spider-Man. He is a 2 threat, 2 attack, 2 defense hero with the champion and web warrior traits, and special abilities Venom Blast, which will deal 2 damage to an enemy and stun that enemy, and Spider Camouflage, which will give Spider-Man a tough status and confuse an enemy. And in this instance, when we're talking about this character, once again, because we have 2 Spider-Men in the game, just a clarification that Miles's ability, that's a tongue twister, refers strictly to himself. You cannot use his ability to give Peter Parker Spider-Man a tough status. Additionally, going into even more complex areas, Rogue is the kind of like breaks all the rules kind of hero. And I don't know for certain if you were to play one of the abilities on Spider-Man, his special abilities, I believe, remain self-referential. It's complicated. The long and short of it is that his special ability is these 2 special abilities are going to be called out by other cards in his kit, other events in his kit. I think even some upgrades. So when those are triggered, even if another hero was to trigger them, I do not believe that means that that hero would then benefit from Miles's ability. And last but not least, because I always manage to skip over this, Spider-Man himself has 5 hand size and 9 hit points, and Miles has 6 hand size and 9 hit points. Something I always tend to overlook. Real quick, let's talk about the community spotlight, which this week is going to be Web Warrior Fanatic, who has started a Mythbuster series in the last few weeks. And I do think that just in general, the idea of kind of taking on these challenges of like, can this work, is really interesting, and I think you should go check it out. But at this point, let's talk about some of the events coming out of Miles Morales. So we have Double Life, a 1-cost event with max 1 per round, and the action, change your form if you paid for this using a physical resource. ready your identity. So the nice thing about this is that, one, this is a way to change forms, but also it's one that you can change when you are in alter ego form. So it's a way to get into hero form, and it's a way to ready your identity. So this does a lot all in one little package, and I appreciate that. This does help to support Miles, his want to change alter ego and to go to alter ego form on a pretty regular basis, and supports that. Like that just helps so that you can both get to alter ego and get to hero form. You can make that swap all in one turn, and get whatever benefits you're looking for. You can flip over to alter ego, recover, and then flip back over to hero form and ready back up. And that really helps to kind of keep Miles' gameplay to be very bouncy and sporadic. That's one thing that I do appreciate about the character, is that he has a very strong built-in ability to basically adapt to situations, and this card helps to do that. Then we have 3 copies of Webshot, a 3-cost event attack. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. If you paid for this using an energy resource, resolve Spider-Man's Venom Blast ability, and that is the ability that deals 2 damage to an enemy and stuns that enemy. So this is a good way to just get in 6 damage and stun an enemy. That's very crucial. And I suppose that's another thing that to kind of the weak points, as we'll get into, because obviously looking right at Spider-Man, he very much crumbles when it comes to villains that cannot be confused or stunned. Even like Steady is hard, but Stalwart is even harder. And so much of his kit is built around the idea of doing that. And so I do think this is still strong, because for 2 you get to deal 6. I think that's pretty good, but you will miss out on the stun. And I guess additionally, you can spread that damage. So you don't have to deal 6 damage to one player or to one character. You can deal 4 damage to a guard minion and 2 damage to something else. I don't think, because the guard minion is still in play, I don't believe you can do the 2 damage to the villain. I always see, this is part about the rulings of Marvel Champions that I kind of get wrong, and guard is one of those ones that trips me up, because I don't think you just resolve it one sentence at a time. I think you have to resolve everything at all once, so you can't even choose the villain. Oh gosh, okay. I'll have to look into that, and I will put any kind of clarification on the bottom of the screen, but I don't think you can hit, if you're attacking a guard minion, I don't think you can hit the villain with the Venom Blast ability, but we will figure that out. That's what I like about this series. It helps me to understand the rules better. Alright, so we've got 2 copies of Web Shooter, a reprint from Peter Parker. It is a 1-cost upgrade item tech, and it uses 3 web counters. When there are no web counters, you discard this card. And it has a hero resource of Exhaust Web Shooter and remove 1 web counter from it, generate a wild resource. This is really helpful, and I think from a new player perspective, and maybe even from somebody who's optimized, this might not read as good as it looks. But I will say that having played enough Marvel Champions, you can finish a scenario in 6 to 8 turns. It goes on for a long time. 45 minutes can be the typical run play, even when the runtime when you are playing solo. But when you break it down, you didn't actually have that many turns. Maybe you had 10, maybe you had 12. And the longer that the game goes on, the more that you're likely to use up this card. But you also go through your deck so fast that I think it's very possible that you can have these web shooters out, you can use them up, and if you do it at the right time, they get shoveled back into your deck, and you will see them eventually. Especially because there's 2 of them. So it's really easy to say, well, this would be nice if it was just always just created resources for me and it never went away. But actually, I think that 1, it would have to cost more. But at this cost, it's basically storing up that 1 resource you used and giving you 2 more instances of it. And yeah, all to say, long tangent to say that I think that while this card has its setbacks, I think that actually you're not going to use it up as fast as you think you are, or at least I don't think games go on as long as you think they do. You invest a lot of time into it, but having played enough Marvel Champions, I will say that you think games are longer than they are, but in reality, you might only play 7, 8, 12 turns. So these actually get you most of the way through the game, and that's kind of not to be undersold. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Arachnobatics, a 1-cost event attack. Hero action, deal 2 damage to an enemy. If that enemy has a stun status card, deal 3 additional damage to it. Then if that enemy has a confused status, deal 3 additional damage to it. So this is just like the super combo breaker. And in multiplayer, this is so beautiful in multiplayer, where you have another player at the table who can help to add these statuses. And really, if you're doing it off turn, you can put a status, you can put a confused counter onto something. As long as you don't go alter ego, it won't go away. And so you can get these turns where you put a confused status on something, and the next turn you get a stun status on it, and then you're able to deal the full 8 damage for the 1 cost of an event. Obviously, that 1 is a little kind of deceptive, because you are going to need to do a lot of setup to kind of make that hum, but at the same time, it's not. I guess it's also possible that in 1 turn, you could conceivably get both statuses onto something and make this just a 1-turn super combo. I wouldn't bank on that, though. I would bank on the fact that you're going to be doing that over the course of 2 turns, where you stun somebody, you go into alter ego so that the stun doesn't fall off. This is also something that changes dramatically in multiplayer, where you can't just rely on that. Which I guess kind of makes this a very lenticular card, where its power level is really affected by what the makeup of the game is. Do you have a multiplayer team that can help you to get these statuses on so that you can do this in 1 turn? Or do you need to kind of play around it because you can't put a stun and reliably keep it there because somebody's going to get attacked? You know, all that stuff to say that this is a very interesting card, and I think that even if you're just getting 5 damage out of it, you feel really good afterwards. And if you're just getting that 2, maybe you're just breaking it tough, and for the cost of 2 effective cards, or maybe a web shooter, you are breaking it tough and hopefully not breaking the pace of your game. But this probably could be one of my favorite cards. It's hard to say because it is just so dynamic as to the floor and the ceiling on this card. Then we've got 2 copies of Swing In, a 2-cost event. Thwart, hero action, remove 4 threat from a scheme. If you paid for this card using a mental resource, resolve Spider-Man's spider camouflage ability, which is the give a tough status and confuse an enemy. So yeah, this is also really good. This is one where I think I would prefer to get the kicker out of it and to get all parts of the buffalo on this, but at the same time, just removing 4 threat is still pretty good. And if you just can't get the camouflage off, then you just don't get the camouflage off. I guess this is another good example of, as I was talking about before, and that long tangent about referring to stuff. I wish that this, like in a rogue situation, where if Rogue played this and she managed to do the mental resource, that she could get the tough status, but I'm very certain that that's not how it works. And that in that situation, you will get the benefit of giving the Miles Morales player a tough status and confusing an enemy, but it's just not going to be as self-referential as you might think it is, where who the card is referring to itself is a little dodgy sometimes. Then we've got 1 copy of Power Within, a 1-cost upgrade superpower. After your hero uses a basic power, which hero, so yeah, it's got to be defense, attack, thwart. I was going to say this isn't domino where it's anything, recovery included. So yes, if you use a basic power while in your hero form, discard power from within, resolve the Venom Blast ability, so deal 2 damage, stun that enemy. And yeah, this is just nice to have, because when thwarting, you can still get some damage in. You can break it tough. You can stun an enemy. When defending, you can do the same thing. And yeah, that just helps to add to the versatility of Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And yeah, I don't really know there's much more to say, because I think it's just a fine card that you just want to time well. You want to be in a situation where this gets shuffled back into the deck when you do your shuffle. Like, this isn't a card that I necessarily mulligan for, or that I play really to always optimize, but it's one that I think you feel it just kind of in your bones when you're like, oh, I'm only going to use power within once. That's unfortunate. Then we've got Defensive Mechanism, a 1-cost upgrade, superpower again. After your hero uses a basic power, we already covered that, discarded Defense Mechanism, resolve the camouflage ability, so you're going to get a tough status, and you're going to confuse the enemy. Same thing as Power Within. I think these are both really cool cards. They're not necessarily the first thing I think of when I think of Miles Morales, but I do think that they are the cards that if you can get them into play and activate them more than once per game, you're going to be off on the right foot. And the times when that doesn't happen, like I said, you're going to feel it and you're going to say, oh man, I wish I would have been able to pull that off. Then we've got Ganke Lee, a 2-cost support persona with the action of Exhaust Ganke Lee, draw 1 card, and if you are in hero form, choose and discard 1 card from your hand. So the nice thing about this is you do have this benefit in any form, but you will not gain card advantage if you are in hero form. You get card selection, which is nice, and that's always great, and you get to get through your deck a little bit faster. But I do think this is the kind of card that you want to have in play as much as possible, because you are going to get benefit from it. You're going to see more benefit from it if you are an alter ego. A lot of times that's just going to be the case, but I do think that this is the kind of card that I really love and I want to have around as much as possible. And then the last card in the kit is Jefferson Davis, a 2-cost support persona shield with the alter ego action of Exhaust Jefferson Davis. Remove 1 threat from the scheme with the least threat. This is maybe the card that I think is just the worst, and I think it's because it just has too many caveats. So often, if there are multiple threats in play, you are progressing the game. But unfortunately, this has just the right caveat to make it so that it's sometimes just not doing what you want it to do. You get into a situation where the scheme you're really worried about does not qualify for this, and so all you're doing is just sort of like dealing with a less important scheme, and unfortunately that comes up more times than I care to admit, and has always been this big kind of like setback of like ruining the tempo of a turn. I think there are ways that you are able to use this card and make advantageous moves, but the problem is this alter ego. So like if you are switching into if part of your plan for your turn is that you are going to go to alter ego at some point, but you need to do a bunch of stuff in hero form, unless you have double life in hand, once you commit to a form, obviously you are in that form, so that can really complicate using this card. And it's unfortunate because I do think that it's interesting design. I just feel like, unfortunately, it just has, like I said, it has just the right caveat to really make it a stumbling block. But at this point, I think we are ready to go look at the example deck before we move on to the obligation and Nemesis. All right, and here we are with the example deck, which I think for Miles was pretty simple to kind of track down. I will say Miles facilitates wanting to have an awful lot of cards from other decks in his deck. But I think as a beginner, it's not a bad decision to just go with the core set and the Sinister Motives deck, because I do think that Miles comes with a very good Justice Shield deck, and I think that if you're just going to explore Miles, I do think that beginner-friendly aggression is really good for him too. Couldn't find a deck that fit into that, but this deck is also inspired by Play Descartes, Steve, who, as you can notice here, makes English and French speaking content. You should go check him out. But either way, let's just quickly look at this deck real quick, because I do think that if you've played with Miles from the Sinister Motives deck, you have a pretty good idea of what this is, but let's just open it up to other things you can do with this, because I do think that, I think we will learn this with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box, but I do think that S.H.I.E.L.D. has a very good showing here. So we've got Agent 13, who comes with Miles, a 4-cost ally with one attack, or with 2 thwart, 1 attack, is a shield and spy character. And after Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, choose a shield support, which Jefferson is, and ready that support. So this is not the best card in the game, but I do think that this, especially in a shield focused deck, this does so much more than you might think it does. And I'm trying to think of who that was that I played with. I played a Valkyrie shield deck, and I do think that she did a lot of work. Agent 13 did a lot of work in that deck, because you just don't realize how good getting an extra activation out of shield supports are until you've done it. Oops, not that. Then we've got Dum Dum Dugan, who is a 5-cost ally with 3 thwart, 3 attack, the shield trait, and an interrupt when you use one of Dum Dum Dugan's basic powers. Exhaust up to 3 shield cards you control. For each card exhausted this way, Dum Dum Dugan gets +1 to that power for that use. So he's got 5 health, and he's got a lot of consequential damage. You want to get use out of this basic power. The thing is, shield cards, non-characters, usually come with uses. So this helps you get an extra turn out of those, because you're going to, instead of getting the effect you were looking for, you get an extra boost to Dum Dum Dugan. And I also think that going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if the 5 cost on this ally gets really diminished by the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box. They just make shield cards a little bit more efficient, so that this maybe only costs you, okay, I don't think they're going to make this card, but let's just say that there was a Power of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a stupid name for a card, but just go with me, that gives you 2 wild resources when you on a shield card. That would make this better. That would make this more efficient. It would make it more accessible to more people, because people with a small of hand size are not going to be able to benefit from this. But either way, I think that Dum Dum Dugan is just a cool card, and any chance you can get to play him is probably one that you should, just because he kind of is very niche. Then we got Ghost Spider, Gwen Stacy. She is a 3-cost ally, Web Warrior, 3 health, or 3 hit points. Can only play if you have a Web Warrior trait. And when Ghost Spider leaves play, search your deck for identity-specific event and add it to your hand. That is super great. I would say the only setback for this card is just that you're not going to get that effect right away. It's when she leaves play. Granted, there are ways to make sure that she can get out of play rather quickly, but let me just check here, because maybe I'm misremembering. Miles does not come with a defense event, so it's not like you can have Gwen block the villain, leave play, get a defense event, because it's got to be identity specific so that you can dance around a minion. Either way, I think this card is very good. I'm kind of underselling it, because I do think there's a lot of uses for it. And if you have a way to cheat her in to around the Web Warrior restriction, being able to use her in any hero is just a good time. We got Monica Chang, who is, I think, one of the best things to happen to the Justice aspect in a long time. Especially when she came out. She costs 3, she's got 1 thwart, 1 attack, but the important thing is that she goes and gets you an extra copy of Surveillance Team from your discard pile or your deck or your hand. I forgot about that. So she can just cheat one in from your hand, but then she puts extra counters on Surveillance Team. And what this usually results in is that instead of playing 3 copies, and I could be playing this wrong, but instead of playing 3 copies of Surveillance Team, I will only play 2, because Monica Chang is effectively 1 copy of it, and there's a chance that one of them went to my discard pile anyway, or I haven't found them. So this just means that she just helps to balance that out and opens up a card slot for me. It's funny. I'm essentially using Monica Chang as a Surveillance Team so that I don't need to have 3 copies. But either way, I think that she is a great card. Easy to throw into the bus once she's in play. You get that 1 thwart out of her, then you just let her get defeated and shuffle back in so that you can do it all over again. But I hope that there are more cards like this for other shield adjacent aspect cards going forward. Then we've got Spider-Man Hobie Brown. Very good staple. If you do not have this card in your Web Warrior deck, you are missing out. He is a very powerful card. When he leaves play, just like Gwen, you discard the top 3 cards of the encounter deck, deal damage to the villain equal to the number of boost icons discarded this way. This can go sideways, where you don't deal a lot of damage. On the flip side, I've dealt 7 damage multiple times with this. And it is so easy. And the thing is, Web Warriors already want to leave play. Gwen wanted to leave play. Hobie wants to leave play. What that results in is just this really fun gameplay loop where you're losing allies, but you're gaining huge upsides on a pretty regular basis. Then this is Peter Parker Spider-Man, 3 cost ally with 3 health and 2 thwart, 2 attack, Web Warrior trait, and the requirement that you need to play one of each of the energy types. And if you want to play 3 wilds, that would also work. But he does have that resource requirement, which can also be cheated around in multiple ways. Either way, he's got the responsibility of after Spider-Man attacks or thwarts, and this is just referring to this card named Spider-Man, not Hobie Brown, not Miles Morales, just the Spider-Man. After he attacks or thwarts, choose another Web Warrior character, ready that character. Just great. He is a great card to have in Web Warrior. I will say that I don't know that he makes every single Web Warrior deck, but once you open up the card pool to other Web Warriors, I think you very quickly can substitute some of these out. Although Spider-Man UK and Ghost Spider are probably staples that I would have in 80% of my Web Warrior decks, as long as they make the grade, and I think they do. Then we've got Across the Spider-Verse, a basic event for 2. Hero action, exhaust a Web Warrior character you control, search your discard pile for a Web Warrior ally and put it into play, then choose a player, you can choose yourself. That player may spend 3 resources of any type to repeat this ability. So this can be just a great way to recur a bunch of stuff. And this is the kind of recursion that I'm here for. This does get spendy. It basically does rely on you having pretty good communication in a multiplayer table to go, okay, does anybody want to circumvent the other things they have in their hand to basically do a big Across the Spider-Verse and just bring all the Web Warriors to the yard? I don't know that I've been in a multiplayer table where that's happened, but I imagine that in the heyday of Sinister Motives, that was a thing that probably happened on a regular basis. Arachnobatics. First Aid, pretty basic card, just heal 2. This is low-hanging fruit of a card that I would say you probably substitute out pretty quickly, but every deck needs 1 or 2 cards that are kind of easy to substitute out. Then we've got, not that. We got Global Logistics. This is a great card in a shield deck. Exhaust 1 shield card. It is a event for 0 tactic shield traded, and exhaust 1 shield card you control. Look at the top 4 cards of a player deck or the encounter deck. Discard any number of those and put the others on top or on the bottom in any order. This is nice for setting up, not only searching through your deck to try to find something you're looking for, or setting up the encounter deck so that you know that you are safe, you're not going to get schemed out, you're not going to take a big attack, whatever it is. You can probably also set up what your encounter card is actually going to be. This is a very strong card and is the kind of thing that kind of goes in tandem with Agent 13, just using shield cards to your advantage. Then Homeland Intervention, which is another Justice event for 0, shield and tactic traded, and action, exhaust up to 3 shield cards you control and choose a scheme. Remove 2 threat from that scheme for each card exhausted this way. Yeah, this is just another super thwarter event. I think the shield archetype, especially in Justice, is very good. We got the basic resources. We got Field Agent, 1 cost support, persona, and shield traded with 3 backup counters. When a shield ally would take any amount of consequential damage, exhaust Field Agent and remove 1 backup counter from it, prevent 1 of that damage. So this is a nice way to give some longevity to Dum Dum Dugan, because he's taking a lot of consequential damage, and this can just curb that a little bit. And it also is just nice as 3 copies of a card in your deck that can play well with cards like Global Logistics and Homeland Intervention. Government Liaison is a 2-cost support, persona, shield traded, exhaust Government Liaison. Play a shield card from your hand, reducing its cost by 1. This, first of all, I will say one knock against this, although this does make playing cards like Dum Dum Dugan easier. But a lot of the shield cards are so inexpensive that this can basically this does pay for a field agent, but it doesn't do anything for you for Global Logistics or Homeland Intervention. Do you care about that? No, because those are free events. But I think I'm being too critical. This is a good card. You can't double it up. When you do this, this is the action that's putting you towards playing that shield card and reducing its cost. This doesn't reduce the cost of the next shield card you play by 1. So if you have 3 of them, you can play a 3 cost thing for free. It all stacks up, and it's all going to be good. Great card. Just in general, it's the kind of card that I think this is one that I easily want to have 3 copies of in a shield deck. It's going to be interesting when we get to a point when these staples are no longer staples because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. shifted everything. Then we have Sky Destroyer, another support, shield vehicle traded. Response, after you play a shield card, exhaust Sky Destroyer, deal 2 damage to an enemy. This is fun. I will say I was thrown off by this card at first because I was like, do I really want to pay 3 for that? That seems so much. But once you have it in play and you're just dropping shield cards, this just becomes like a turret. And it's just great. And okay, we do have a couple more cards. Okay, Surveillance Team, already talked about it, but I do recommend. Yeah. This does have 2. Okay, so I kind of was on the right. That inclination was right. Surveillance Team got a new breath of life from Monica Chang, but it is a 2-cost support with the shield trait. Comes with 3 uses for snoop counters, and action exhausts Surveillance Team and remove 1 snoop counter from it. Remove 1 threat from a scheme. So this can just be a really nice way right out of the core set to mitigate threat and to kind of like just allow, like with Thor, this was great because Thor has such a horrible thwart, and this just helps to basically negate entire turns of the general gathering of threat on a scheme. And the longer you can do this, we got Monica Chang, so these just come in with 4 uses, or the one that's already in play gets an additional 4th use. This was a B plus card, or I guess it was like a B minus card that got turned into a B plus by the existence of Monica Chang, maybe even an A minus. And then last card, before we jump back into everything, is Web of Life and Destiny, a basic 3-cost support, location Web Warrior, and you ignore the resource cost of this card if your identity has a Web Warrior trait. So this is one way to get that Web Warrior trait for some of the cards that need it. And then if you're just a Web Warrior, you just get to put it into play, which I do think might be a little bit of a mistake. But either way, we have a response after a Web Warrior ally leaves play, choose a player, that player draws a card. Notably, this does not exhaust. So this is the beginning of the Web Warriors just want to leave play, and cards like Spider and I'm trying to think of what the other ones are. Spider very much just is a recursive Web Warrior. Web of Life and Destiny is, like I said, might have been a bit of a mistake. It probably should have just reduced by 1 or 2, not be just free. But either way, good card and a good way to get around the Web Warrior restriction and be able to play Web Warriors and Iron Man. But let's go talk about the remainder of the cards. And we are back talking about the obligation. So we have Keeping Secrets. A obligation given to the Miles Morales player. You may flip to your alter ego form, and then you choose to exhaust Miles Morales, remove the Keeping Secrets from the game, or discard Ganke Lee and Jefferson Davis from play. If neither were discarded this way, this card gains surge. Discard this obligation. So this is a weird card, and I get what it's trying to do from like a lore perspective and everything, but you already want to be an alter ego, so this is kind of a free flip. And I feel like at that point, just getting rid of it from the game is all you're going to do. And I guess I've always been hypercritical, I feel like, in reflection of obligations. I don't feel like they should be game enders. They're just supposed to be things that kind of mess with your math. And if you think you can survive by just, doing the second one, getting rid of Ganke or getting rid of Jefferson and rolling with it, or just taking the surge, that's one thing. But in this case, I feel like I already want to be an alter ego, so this is just a free flip. So this isn't actually, it doesn't hurt you that much because you might want to be there, and then everything just gets better for you. So yes, I'm not too concerned about this one. This one's a pretty soft obligation, in my opinion. Then we have the Prowler. And actually, let's get into the habit of doing this. because we got the Prowler and the side scheme that comes into play with it. That way we're taking everything into context as we're evaluating the minion. So the Prowler is a minion with 1 scheme, 2 attack, the criminal trait, and 5 health. It has Stalwart, which is very well designed for Spider-Man because you can't stun or confuse him. And when revealed, if you are in alter ego form, give Prowler a tough status card. I'm very happy that he does not attack you in alter ego form. He very well could have, and that would really be difficult because this character is Miles Morales' uncle, so he does very much interact with his alter ego side, which I do believe we see later on in the kit, but that's not something that comes out here. And then we have the side scheme of tracking prey, which when revealed, if you are in alter ego form, place an acceleration token here. This has 4 threat on it. It has an acceleration icon. It could have an acceleration token, which means you want to get rid of this as quickly as possible. The good thing is that his thwarting event, let me just make sure of this so I'm not completely off base. Yes, his thwarting event, swinging in, does remove 4 threat from a scheme. In your kit, you have a way to deal with this and then make it go away. But I will say that this is one of those times when you hit Shadow of the Past and these two come out, and it really is a huge speed bump. Luckily, Prowler does not have patrol, but he is something that you want to deal with. If you happen to be in alter ego form, which you might be, it's a 50-50 chance you will be in alter ego form. He will get a tough status, and that makes it even harder. And so just in general, I do feel like there's a 1-2 punch. This is a very strong one. I don't necessarily know if it's one that I'm entirely worried about, but it's something that I think that you have to take into account. What stage of the game are you in? If you're late enough, you don't need to worry about this. That's one thing. But if you think the game's going to go on for 2 or 3 more turns, tracking prey throws off the math so much that you just need to stop what you're doing and deal with this because it's going to get out of hand. Then we've got 2 copies of Slice and Dice, a treachery. When revealed, Prowler attacks the player with the fewest remaining hit points, even if that player is in alter ego form. Knew that was going to come back around. If that attack defeats a character or no attack was made this way, this card gains Surge. So if everybody has the same amount of hit points, then it's not going to make an attack. Is that true? I suppose that would be the way that no attack would be made this way. I suppose if you had some way to cancel the attack outright, that would be another thing. And I'm just completely blanking on what that card would be. But either way, this is going to attack you. It's going to attack you if you're in alter ego form, which means that if you are at the table with a Miles Morales player and Shadow of the Past has been played, you do need to ask yourself, does an attack for 2 kill me? Because if it does, then you need to do something about that, because you can't end your turn with 2 or less health, because the Prowler could attack you even if you're in alter ego form. Other than that, yeah, this is just a fun card. Obviously, it plays dirty sometimes, but that's kind of what you come to expect. If you've gotten to the point where Shadow of the Past has come into play, the game has already escalated, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. It's going to be more off track from what you were planning on doing, and that's fine. That's just part of what makes this game fun, the challenges. And then the last card is Razor Claws, a weapon attached to a minion with the highest printed hit points. If you cannot, this card gains Surge. Attached minion attacks gain Piercing, and it gives +2 attack. Oh, I suppose if there's no minions in play, yeah, this card would gain Surge. This is kind of dangerous. It's once again, hopefully, if the minion comes into play with the highest printed hit points, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has the highest hit points at that time. You could have a minion with 1 health left, but they have a printed hit points of 9. So suddenly this gets a boost. Hopefully you do not run into a situation where this gets added to a minion, and then suddenly you draw any card that says the villain and minions engage with you, attack you, because that would be difficult. But overall, yeah, just a fun card. Makes minions a little bit more scary, but hopefully will not actually change the game for you too much, because you're already going to have this all on lock. That is Miles Morales Spider-Man. Like I said, he is a character that in the comics I love, and in the game I would say just falls outside of my top 10, probably like the top 15. But I think this is a character that I don't mind giving to a player once they've played a game or two. I think he's just complicated enough. The special abilities are just complicated enough that it would probably confuse somebody who's playing for the first time, but I don't think that it's beyond expectations that he is a character that you can play with just after you've gotten some of your games in. And I guess I'll go back to what I said before, where Boom Guy said that he had pretty good recursion. I think that it's true. I think because I think I would go to Alter Ego more as Miles than I would as Colossus. So he does have that recursion. And I actually, truthfully, I thought when I read that comment, I went, oh, does one of his supports, so Ganke or Jefferson, do some kind of recursion? And they don't. I guess I'm kind of like 60% on board with Miles having better recursion than Colossus. But I think that the character that we'll get into one day was War Machine. War Machine's the one that's going to get called out. And if memory serves, I do think that was an accurate assessment. Next time we'll be talking about Gwen Stacy. And yeah, I will see you then, and have a great day. Bye.